Here we are, y'all. Good friends of RIC, the Taliban, making moves. Y'all see it. Taliban overrun 7 and 8 Afghan provincial capitals. It's an hour ago. This is fresh off the press. 2 provincial capitals in Afghanistan all but fell to the Taliban on Tuesday. This time in the country's west and north, local officials said, marking the 7th and 8th to be overrun in under a week. Come on, that's what I'm talking about. The Taliban have been encroaching for some time on Farah City, the capital of the province with the same name, as the western province has been a focal point of the group's offensive operations in the country's west for years. Gulbuddin, a police officer in Farah City who, like many Afghans, goes by one name, said the government officials have fled to an army headquarters several miles outside the city and that the main prison has been breached by Taliban fighters. The streets, he said, were full of freed inmates. And in the north, the months-long Taliban stronghold in the capital, Baghlan province, Puli Kumri, finally succeeded, forcing government forces to retreat. The city is on the highway connecting the northern provinces to Kabul, meaning insurgents need only to turn south and advance to begin putting even more pressure the country's capital. It should say even more pressure on. That's okay. We're going to keep reading. Mohammed Kamen Baghlani, a pro-government militia commander in Baghlan, said that Puli Kumri had fallen on Tuesday and that his forces had retreated to the south. All areas of the city fell. We are under a lot of pressure and we are not able to resist anymore. Masood Bakhtawar, the provincial governor of Farah, denied that the city had been captured by the insurgents and said that the fighting was ongoing. Bismillah Atash, a member of provincial council in Baghlan province, said that the city of Puli Kumri fell after government forces had resisted there for months. Farah and Puli Kumri's likely fall come as fall comes as the likely fall. Whoa, that's crazy. That's crazy. Farah and Pulu Kumri's likely fall comes as the Afghan security forces have been fending off attacks in other cities, including the province of Herat, where fighting has been reported outside the capital. The Taliban are entrenched in Kandahar and Lashkargah in the south, and outside of Faizabad, the capital of Badakhshan, the remote northern province that was once considered an anti-Taliban stronghold. It cannot be understated what these losses will inevitably do to the already dwindling morale of the government security forces. It's going to force them to join the Taliban. The seizure of now 6 provincial capitals in the northern provinces in 5 days has sent thousands of refugees to seek refuge in Kabul, the country's capital. A fenced-in basketball court in a park downtown was transformed into a place of refuge on Monday. Displaced people huddled together under makeshift lodging consisted of little more than bed sheets stretched across wooden poles. Hasid Siddiqui, a resident of Farah City, said his neighbors had fled the city in recent days. We were deceived by the government's assurances, he said. They said the city won't collapse and that they have brought choppers and aircraft and they will defend the city. In recent weeks, the Afghan government has done little to articulate a plan to fend off the Taliban's military offensive, who has captured roughly half of Afghanistan's 400-odd districts since the U.S. military withdrawal began on May 1st. But a fledgling strategy to slow down the Taliban's string of victories does now exist. U.S. and UN diplomats and officials say, as they describe the plans, aligns closely with long-standing U.S. recommendations that the Afghans consolidate the remaining forces around crucial roads and cities, as well as key border crossings, and abandon most of the dozen districts already seized by the Taliban. How that plan takes into consideration the capture of now 7 provincial capitals around the country remains unclear. Listen, they're pretty much saying how did that plan takes into place what they've already done. They don't understand, like, what is that going to do for what's already happened, right? Nothing. But let's just keep reading. As of Tuesday, Afghan security forces, let's talk today. As of Tuesday, Afghan security forces had yet to carry out any earnest operations to retake seized capitals. The one stopgap measure that Afghan military leaders appeared to rely on in recent months, shuttling better trained commando forces from one vulnerable position to another to stymie the insurgent advance, has been exhausted. There are simply not enough of those troops to prevent the Taliban from taking provincial capitals. The seizure of Zaranj in Nimruz province of the Afghanistan-Iran border on Friday highlighted this. The 215 Corps of the Afghan National Army is responsible for security in both Zaranj and Lashkargah, the capital of neighboring Helmand province. Which had also been under siege for several days last week. The 215 Corps leadership ultimately shifted its focus to defending Lashkargah, leaving Zaranj open to the Taliban, who saw little resistance when they entered the city. Zabullah Mujahid, a Taliban spokesman, said that the push to take provincial capitals was in response to an announcement earlier this month by Afghanistan President Ashraf Ghani of his war strategy that included defending cities. Another Taliban official said that the offensive against urban areas, which has killed and wounded thousands of civilians, was a response to American airstrikes. It's probably both. But for whatever the reason, it was already clear months ago that the Taliban, confident of victory in battle, had all but stepped away from peace negotiations with the Afghan government. Despite peace talks being stalled for several months, Afghan representatives met with Taliban officials this week in Doha, Qatar, in an attempt to restart negotiations. Abdullah, the chairman of Afghanistan's High Council for National Reconciliation, said the Taliban were willing to accelerate peace talks, but continue to refuse to discuss any kind of political settlement. Instead, they continue to demand the release of Taliban prisoners, which the Afghan government had rejected. For our province sits on the main highway that runs to the west city of Herat, where Taliban fighters also have laid siege. The province also shares a border with Iran, the main border crossing that was seized by the Taliban last month. Taking Farah and other cities in the area would allow the group to funnel insurgent fighters toward Herat or elsewhere to reinforce other positions, also while limiting Afghan security forces' ability to relocate aircraft, which are in short supply because of the lack of maintenance resources and exhausted pilots. The same can be said for Pul Ikumuri, with the city under Taliban control, along with the key north-south highway that runs through it. The insurgents are dangerously close to completely isolating the north of the country. Despite the Taliban's rapid shift from attacking rural areas to assaulting cities, U.S. air support has been muted. The United States has only provided air support to Afghan security forces in 2 southern cities. Bearing intervention by the White House or Pentagon, such support is considered likely to end by August 31st, as American forces complete their withdrawal. Taimur Shah reported from Kandahar, and Thomas Gibbons Neff and Najim Rahim from Kabul, Afghanistan. Fahim Abed contributed, reporting from Kabul. I'm not going to read the article that says where the United States. No, let me just look. Let me just see if I can't find it. U.S. won't honor Taliban. Whoa. That's right. Let's see what I come up with. There we go. Bang, bang, bang. Y'all know how I do it. Y'all know how I do it. We're gonna let this load up. It's a little bit of a read, but we're gonna read it, okay? Because that's what we do. Now understand, the U.S. vows to isolate Taliban if they take power by force. They literally. How did they get into Afghanistan other than by force? How did they take over all those places that the Afghan government so-called held other than by force? So the same way that you took this shit, if they take it back the same way, this is how you know that. This is how you know that these Gentiles are literally mentally confused and don't understand righteousness, because they're saying that what we did, you can't do. Now let's keep reading. This is by Kathy Gannon and Tahim Akbar. And this is from today as well, from early this morning. Because it was uploaded 11 hours ago. Not today, you know what I mean. Last night, today, whatever. Let's keep reading. Kabul, Afghanistan. As a U.S. peace envoy brought a warning to the Taliban on Tuesday that any government that comes to power through force in Afghanistan won't be recognized internationally after a series of cities fell to the insurgent group in a stunningly quick succession. Stop right there. How else did the United States come to power other than by force, y'all? Do y'all understand what I'm saying? Like, how can you honor what they're saying? That's the devil. That's the devil talking right there. Only the devil will tell you that if you do what I've done, we won't recognize it, even though we did the same things. Okay. And the Afghanis have not airstruck America. Nobody's airstruck. Nobody's dropped bombs from planes in America like America has done to other countries. Yet, people are supposed to honor that fucking bullshit. Once again, Rick, I'm holding it down for you. Rick owes me I'm owed a standing ovation all throughout this bitch, straight up. Zalmay Khalilzad, the U.S. envoy, traveled to Doha, Qatar, where the Taliban maintain a political office, to tell the group that there was no point in pursuing victory on the battlefield because the military takeover of the capital of Kabul would guarantee they would be global pariahs. And he and others hope to persuade Taliban leaders to return to peace talks with the Afghan government as American and NATO forces finish their pullout from the country. The insurgents have captured 6 out of 34 provincial capitals in the country in less than a week. And make that 8, including Kunduz and Kunduz provinces, one of the country's largest cities. On Sunday, they planted their flag on the main square, but government forces still control the strategic airport and an army base on the city's outskirts. They are now battling in the Western-backed government for control of several others. Late on Tuesday, Taliban forces entered Farah and were seen in front of the provincial governor's office. Taliban spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid tweeted the insurgents had taken the city, which is the capital of a province with the same name. But Abdul Nasser Farhadi, a lawmaker from the area who's in Kabul, said the government still retained control of the intelligence department and a military base. After a 20-year Western military mission and trillions of dollars spent training and shoring up Afghan forces, many are at odds to explain why the regular forces have collapsed, fleeing the battle sometimes by the hundreds. The fighting has been largely to small groups of elite forces. The fighting has fallen largely to small groups of elite forces and the Afghan Air Force. These dudes are tired of fighting a war that should have never been fought on their land in the first place. If Sunnis and Shias want to kill each other over what they believe, let them do so. The success of Taliban Blitz has added urgency to the need to restart the long-stalled talks that could end the fighting and move Afghanistan towards an inclusive interim administration. The insurgents have so far refused to return to the negotiating table. Want to know why? Because when they smashed the Taliban all the way down to almost to fucking nothing, there was no talks with the Taliban. There were no peace talks. There was none of that shit. Okay? And they smashed them with force. So why would they use anything other than force? Khalilzad's mission in Qatar is to help formulate a joint international response to the rapidly deteriorating situation in Afghanistan, according to the U.S. State Department. He plans to press the Taliban to stop their military offensive and to negotiate a political settlement, which is the only path to stability and development in Afghanistan. That's a fucking lie. Russia and China got their back. What, the world going to turn their back to China and Russia? You can't. Those are two of the largest economies. It just won't fucking happen like that, y'all. I'm the only one telling y'all this because I care, because when it jumps off in America, I don't want nobody acting surprised, looking with a stupid look on their face. Meanwhile, the Taliban military chief released an audio message to his fighters on Tuesday, ordering them not to harm Afghan forces and government officials in territories they conquered. The recording was shared on Twitter by Taliban spokesman in Doha, Mohammed Naeem. Shared on Twitter. Stop it. See, once again, this is how you know that the U.S. government is involved at every level. These do once again. How are you a terrorist and you have a YouTube or an Instagram or a Twitter or a Facebook or any of that shit? It's so-called terrorists. I'm not calling the Taliban terrorists. I'm saying that this is what they've been labeled as. So how can something like Twitter not monitor that and shut your shit down? No, that's what they want to happen. In the nearly 5-minute audio, Mohammed Yaqub, the son of late Taliban leader Mullah Muhammad Omar, also told the insurgents to stay out of the abandoned homes of government and security officials who have fled, leave marketplaces open, and protect places of businesses, including banks. Right, because they're Khazars, this is why they're doing it. It was not immediately clear if Taliban fighters on the ground would heed Yaqub's instruction. Some civilians who have fled Taliban advances have said the insurgents imposed repressive restrictions on women and burned down schools. The Office of the UN Human Rights Chief said it has received reports of summary executions and military use and destruction of homes, schools, and clinics in captured areas. There have also been reports of revenge killings. The insurgents have claimed responsibility for killing a comedian in southern Kandahar, assassinating the government media chief in Kabul, and a bombing that targeted acting defense minister Bismillah Khan Mohammadi, killing 8 and wounding more. The minister was not harmed. The intensifying war has driven thousands of people to Kabul, where many are living in parks. The fighting has also increased the number of civilian casualties. The millions that have been maimed and murdered by the Americans, these guys could never touch. Not in a couple of days. It would take them decades to get that close. Anyway, the UN Human Rights Chief, Michelle Bachelet, said Tuesday that her office had counted at least 183 deaths and hundreds of injuries among civilians in a handful of cities in recent weeks, but cautioned the real figures will be much higher. No shit. International Committee of the Red Cross said that its staff has treated more than 4,000 Afghans this month in their 15 facilities across the country, including in Helmand and Kandahar, where Afghan and U.S. airstrikes are trying to rein in the Taliban onslaught. We are seeing homes destroyed, medical staffs and patients put at tremendous risk, and hospitals, electricity, and water infrastructure damaged. Eloy Filion, ICRC's head of delegation in Afghanistan, said in a statement, the use of explosive weaponry in cities is having an indiscriminate impact on the population. No fucking shit. The same way that fucking the Americans bombed shit, it had indiscriminate impact, but where was this complaining then? The surge in Taliban attacks began in April when the U.S. and NATO announced that they would end their military presence and bring the last of their troops home. The final date of withdrawal is August 31, but the U.S. Central Command said that they have already pulled out, that the pullout is already 95% complete. On Monday, the U.S. emphasized that the Biden administration now sees the fight as one for Afghanistan politically and military leaders to win or lose, and showed no sign of stepping up airstrikes despite the Taliban gains. Khalilzad, the architect of the peace deal the Trump administration brokered with Taliban, was expected to hold talks with key regional players and will likely see a commitment from Afghanistan's neighbors and other countries in the region not to recognize a Taliban government that comes to power by force. When the Taliban last ran Afghanistan, 3 countries recognized their rule: Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates. Don't worry. It's going to be Russia, China, and Iran this time. It's going to be another 3 countries. Senior Afghan... Let me stop. But y'all know that RIC, Russia, Iran, China is going to be the ones that you're going to put their names up there. Senior Afghan officials have also traveled to Doha, including Abdullah, who heads the government's Reconciliation Council, Pakistan's National Security Advisor, Moeed Yusuf, and on Monday called for reinvigorated efforts to get all sides in the conflict back to talks, describing a protracted war in Afghanistan as a nightmare scenario for Pakistan. Yusuf refused to definitely say whether Pakistan, which holds considerable sway over the Taliban, would recognize the Taliban government installed by force, instead saying that Pakistan wants to see an inclusive government in Kabul. Gannon reported from Islamabad. Associated Press writers Matthew Lee in Washington and Jamie Keaton in Geneva contributed to this report. This story has been updated to correct that the Taliban have captured 6 provincial capitals, not 5. Don't worry, I just read to y'all they captured 7 of these joints. 8 of them, excuse me. Oh, y'all can't see me, but I'm flexing right now. Flexing. Come on, Rick is going to hold your boy down. They could be Gentiles. Once again, just because they Gentiles don't mean that they can't do the right thing. I want them to, man. I'm waiting for the Gentiles south of the border. I'm waiting for the cartel, okay? I'm waiting for all of them to push up in this bitch. It's just a matter of time. I'll catch y'all later. May tomorrow be better than today, and may this week be better than last week. I'm out.